Welcome to a class of angels where we take a look at advanced writing techniques through the lens of a silly vampire show from the early aughts. My name is Michael Aguero, and today we're going to be looking at Season 1, Episode 2, Lonely Hearts. You'll remember from the last video that we looked at the pilot scene by scene and tried to analyze what each scene was trying to accomplish and how it went about it. For this series, I don't really want to go through every single episode scene by scene. I think it'll end up being a little laborious. Instead, I kind of want to focus on what each episode was trying to do and how it did that. I think because this is only the second episode in the series that we should at least run through the scenes very quickly and see what we can learn from them. While we do that, I want you to play a little game with yourself. I want you to think about, what is this episode trying to accomplish? What are the things that the writers are trying to get through to the audience? So our first scene sees Angel sitting alone in the dark, Doyle coming in. They have a little back and forth about what Doyle is there to do in terms of them helping the helpless. We get Cordelia showing up. We get that Angel is a vampire and Doyle is a half-demon. We get that they are setting up an investigation agency to help the helpless. All of this happens very quickly, and it is designed to help anybody who missed the pilot to catch up. Remember, we talked briefly in the last video that TV worked differently in the late 90s and early 2000s. A thing aired, and if you missed it, you missed it. So even someone who might have been interested in the show could have very easily missed the pilot for a whole bunch of reasons. So the writers are sort of throwing people a bone here to get them caught up, and also helping new people who may have heard about the show since the pilot and want to check it out. It was really common in the era, as it is now, for your friends to get into a show and then say, hey man, you gotta check this out. Well, nowadays you can just pop on Netflix or Hulu or whatever and see all of the episodes. You couldn't do that in those days, you just sort of missed it. So they're taking that first scene to just sort of throw all this information out there to get you caught up. This then triggers Doyle's first vision, the first of many we will see in the series, and we have our setup for the episode. As a brief aside here, there is a gag in the opening scene where Cordelia shows everybody the Angel Investigations business cards, and there's a little joke about how bad the logo is. This is supposed to enforce our idea that Cordelia's character is a little ditzy and maybe not great at her sort of secretary assistant job. The problem here is that the maker of the prop did too good of a job, in my opinion. I don't know about you, but to me that logo sure looks like the outline of an angel, and it makes the joke not stick as well as it should. We then go to the bar where we see a sleazy guy hitting on a young blonde woman. I don't know if the blonde hair was really intentional for the victim here, or if it was just a happy accident. Our three heroes then show up. You will remember from the first video in the series that there was a scene at a party with Angel and Tina was split off so that Angel could meet Cordelia. We reuse the same technique here where Angel says, hey, let's split up. This is all so that he can meet Kate. You will notice that Kate is a blonde. This time it is very intentional. Angel spends most of this scene awkwardly talking and flirting with Kate. You will also notice that Kate is drinking water and that the bartender is very prominent in this scene. For Cordelia and Doyle's half of the scene, they spend a lot of it rehashing backstory and other elements that we learned in the pilot. Cordelia and Doyle then start talking about how Angel is a vigilante, and this may cause problems for them. All right, so we get another scene that is a back and forth, this time between the victim and Angel and company at the bar. The victim goes home with the sleazebag, and they are lying in bed together when he says he just wants to hold her. We cut back to the bar. Angel and company are trying to figure out their next move. You will notice again there is a bunch of backstory here, and that Cordelia mentions that it's not like high school anymore. We cut back to who we thought was our victim, but actually turns out to be the killer, and a bit of misdirection that has been set up since this character was introduced. You will notice here how differently she is dressed and acting. We then get our first hitting the books scene. This will be one of many in this series, and something that personally I have always appreciated about it. Some people might think it comes off as a little too expository or just talking about world building in this series when they talk about the different demons, but they almost always do it to pay off how they are going to defeat the demon in the end. Recently, I've been watching through Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and while I overall like that show, it has a distinct problem, especially in the early scenes, of just sort of solving problems with no real effort or tension put into them. A thing will come up, someone will say something about tachyon inversions or some other technobabble, they'll hit a few buttons on a keyboard and the problem just goes away. There's no effort, there's no tension, it just happens. You'll notice that in this scene specifically, Angel talks about how strong the demon is. We saw it basically kick his ass, and they need a way to stop it. This is a trick that the series employs often, not only to earn their eventual victory against the bad guy, this also has the dual benefit of giving our side characters something to do while Angel is out there trying to find the bad guy. We jump back to the bar where we get a awkward talk and flirting scene between Angel and Kate. We see the bartender again. We see that Kate is once again only drinking water. And we see our killer acting very differently and dressed very differently than she was in the first scene. We jump back to Cordelia and Doyle and a little demon talk, setting up the tension between the two of them. Back at the bar with the bartender, Angel gets a name and uses a phone book, a relic from a past age, to look up the killer. We get the demon talk fight scene. I think this scene's pretty cool. The action is pretty great considering the limitations of the show. And then we get Kate showing up and the reveal that she is actually Detective Lockley. Angel and Kate then have their little back and forth vigilante talk. You'll remember that Doyle mentioned that earlier in the episode. And then Kate shoots at a fleeing suspect jumping out of a window. Back at Cordelia's apartment, we see how she's been living. We get the brawl interlude, not in high school anymore. We get a little bit of world building about how Angel has to be invited in. We get some talk about demons and how the demon has to kill these people in some kind of sex act. We get the monster montage where the monster kills again and Kate searches the Batcave illegally without a warrant. And then we're back at Cordy's with Doyle and Cordy sleeping on the couch. You will notice how they use that montage to break up the two scenes at Cordelia's. So even though we have two scenes in the same location, they're able to slip that montage in there to smooth the time jump. This is the payoff to the hitting the book scene where we find out the monster's weakness, and Angel decides to call Detective Lockley and ask for her help. We get the conclusion of the research where they identify that the demon is weak to fire. We then jump back to Kate and the bartender. There is some final misdirection where Kate goes with the bartender outside, and it turns out that the burrower is now in. Our bartender friend, who has been in quite a few scenes this episode. Again, sort of a hint there. We get a pretty standard monster fight, and Angel uses the homeless barrel of fire to kill him. And then we see that Kate is willing to shoot a man who's on fire 3 times. We get the wrap up between her and Angel. We bring back that joke with the business cards and set up their sort of long-term relationship where they have this awkward romantic tension, but that she is also a potential foil for him because he is a vigilante and she is a cop. We get the final wrap-up scene with Angel, Doyle, and Cordelia. We get our nice bookends by panning out as Angel sits in the dark, exactly the opposite of what we did in the beginning where we panned in on him. And that is the episode. That was just a quick rundown. Again, it helps in this series if you watch the episode before watching the video. So, pop quiz time. What was this episode actually about? When the writer sat down and said, okay, I've got to write this episode, what were they thinking? What were the things that they wanted to get across to the viewer? I think there are 3 main things the writer set out to do here, with maybe a 4th for bonus points. The first thing that this episode is trying to do is be the pilot again. It's trying to take all of that information we learned in the pilot about these characters and their personalities and what they do and restate it to the audience who may have missed that first episode. There's no telling why someone may have missed the pilot, even those who are interested in seeing it. And if somebody's friend said, hey, you gotta check out this show, they need a way to get this information to the viewer who may have missed the first airing of the pilot. So we get a lot of backstory. We get every character's backstory stated in this episode. Doyle is a guy with visions who is trying to help out. Cordelia is snooty, crass, and down on her luck, but willing to help. Angel is a cursed vampire who is trying to save people and has a trouble connecting. So that's number 1. That is one of the main things that the writers are trying to get across. The second is that this is a spin-off. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was set up as a high school show. They were aiming this show at an older demographic, and they wanted to make that very clear. It is stated several times directly by the characters in this episode that they are not in high school anymore, or that behavior is so high school, or back when we were in high school. They are making it very clear that there is a separation between the high school days and the current era. The third thing that this episode is trying to accomplish is setting up the character of Kate Lockley. They are trying to set her up as a romantic interest. That is why she is a blonde. They are trying to set her up as a potential foil. That is why she is a detective, and they talk about Angel being a vigilante. And they are trying to set up that she is a little reckless, both in her constantly shooting at people and that she was willing to search Angel's place without a warrant. These are all things that are going to be relevant to her character later. The fourth thing that this episode does, which I would give partial credit for because it is interesting to note, but I don't think it is the point of the episode, is setting up the romantic subplot between Doyle and Cordelia. It is restated that Doyle is attracted to Cordelia, it is restated that Doyle is a half-demon, and it is stated that Cordelia thinks that, Cordelia doesn't know that Doyle is a half-demon, and that she thinks that half-demons are disgusting. I don't think that was an aim for this episode. I think the writers just had the room and so fit that in, which is a good thing for them to do, but not the goal that they set out with. So why are these goals important? Why do we sit down and try and think about what was in the writer's mind when they were writing this episode? Well, it's because of the blank page. The blank page is the scourge of beginner writers. It is the thing we all fear because we don't know how to handle it. It is a howling void of possibility that we have to fill, and that void creates doubts in us as creators of how to do it. Analyzing this episode and trying to think about what the writers were trying to accomplish gives us a clue as to how we fix that problem. Beginner writers have a bad habit of waiting for the muse, of waiting for this flash of inspiration that's going to come out and give them some great idea that they can run off with. When you're a professional, you can't do that. You have a schedule that you have to keep, you have people relying on you, and you have to be able to write on demand. If you're sitting on the subway and you have some flash of inspiration about a story you can tell about a sex demon, awesome, go for it, chase that muse as long as you can. But when you're a professional, you just can't do that. You have deadlines that you have to meet. So how do we as professional writers handle that problem? Well, these writers sat down and said, okay, this is the second episode in the series. What are the things that I need to accomplish? This is the second episode in a broadcast television show. We have to catch people up. That is non-negotiable. We have to make sure that people know what this show is about in case they missed the pilot. The second thing we have to do as a spin-off is set this up as a separate product. This is not just the same show again. This is a different show for an earlier, more male demographic that may not have connected with the first show. And the third thing we want to accomplish with this episode is setting up the character of Kate Lockley, who is going to be vital to this season. So now that we have those three things that we want to accomplish, we can then start building the episode around it. Well, this is the pilot again, so we need to have an opening scene where Doyle comes in and rehashes some of the stuff that were in the last episode. It's a spin-off that is more adult than the other show, so we have to find a location and a monster who facilitates that. So it's not just going to be a monster of the week, it's going to be a sex demon that preys on people in a bar, neither of which are topics that you will find high schoolers likely to cover. And third, we need to set up the character of Kate Lockley. So we're going to have this sex demon be a serial killer who's been on the prowl for a while, so that we have a reason not only for Angel to go after him, but Kate to go after him. All of these things give us a framework that we can use to build an outline that we're going to use to actually write the episode. When you're an architect, you don't just picture some beautiful, elaborate space and then decide to throw a refrigerator and an oven in it. You sit down and go, okay, this is the kitchen. It has to accomplish certain things. It needs an easy entry and exit point so you have a flow of traffic. It needs to hold these appliances and they take up that much space. There's going to be a lot of noise or smells from the kitchen, so maybe we want to have it farther away from everybody. Or alternatively, people are going to be spending a lot of time in the kitchen, so we want it open and available to the rest of the family, depending on what the client wants. These are all considerations that professionals have to make regardless of their craft. The writer cannot just trust on inspiration here. They have to sit down and go, okay, what is my job? What are the things that I need to accomplish? Those techniques are going to be vital for you as a writer. If you're trying to write a short story, what is the emotion or concept that you are trying to convey? And then what are the best scenes to do that? If it's a novel, then you want to look at your chapter and say, okay, and this chapter, what are the things that I need to accomplish here so they can pay off down here in a later chapter? Is it the character's dynamic? Is it their backstory? Is it some vital world building, magic, whatever, so that people understand it when they get down here? For screenplays, whether it be a movie or a television show, you saw it here in this episode. The writers had to sit down and think, okay, what are the topics that I absolutely have to cover here? And then what are the settings, locations, characters that I can put in there that are going to facilitate this and make it easier to get across to the viewer? they are not starting with a blank page. They are not starting with inspiration or a muse. They are starting by sitting down and thinking about the story and characters they are trying to tell to the audience and how best to do that. As a professional writer, it is vital that you build that muscle, and that is one of the benefits of studying a show like this, is we can sort of look in the carcass of this episode and reverse engineer the mechanics that they used to get to the answer that they arrived at. So that is Season 1, Episode 2, Lonely Hearts in the books. And the next video, we will be looking at Season 1, Episode 3. Please watch it before you come to the class. It will help you understand all of these concepts. If you like the video, please tell a friend about it. It will help grow the channel. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can do so over on Patreon or by purchasing my short stories on Google Play. Every bit of support helps the channel grow and evolve and be the best thing that it can be. All of your support is greatly appreciated. My name is Michael Aguero. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Not only did I forget to set a timer in that last take, I forgot to plug in the microphone. So guess who gets to do that entire take all over again?